Picture a teenage girl. She's barely 15 years old, right? And she's standing in these like massive subterranean depths beneath a really historic school.
Right.
And the air is just thick with this crackling, ancient energy. And she is quite literally battling a dragon, like a monstrous, corrupted
Yeah,
beast.
literal dragon.
Exactly. And she's doing this to protect a hidden, world-altering magic. Her mentor has just died. The weight of the entire wizarding world rests squarely on her young shoulders.
It's an incredible image.
It is. Now, I want you to hold that image, that intense world-saving chaos, and cut to nearly a century later. We are in a quiet, historic village.
Completely different vibe.
Totally. A grieving mother and her teenage daughter are living this really discreet, unremarkable life. And they are completely unaware that this exact same ancient primordial power is about to, well, violently resurface in their own bloodline.
Oh, it's wild.
It's mind-blowing. Welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. And a huge thank you to you, the listener, who sent us this incredible collection of character studies, family lore, and intimate letters regarding the Collins family.
Yeah. The archive you curated is just, it's a goldmine.
It really is. The goal of our deep dive today is to trace a century-long thread through 3 generations of witches. We've got Erin, Katherine, and Agatha.
Right. Tracing how extraordinary magical abilities and like rigid societal expectations and just profound personal tragedies shape a family's legacy.
We are going to move chronologically, so we'll start with that world-saving ancestor in the 19th century, transition into the suffocating world of pure-blood high society, and then end up with a modern teenager who holds the key to bringing the whole secret full circle.
It is the starkest contrast imaginable, honestly. We move from the roaring flames of a dragon's breath to the quiet whistling of a tea kettle in a lonely cottage.
But they're bound by the exact same thread.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And looking through the notes you provided, it becomes clear that we aren't just looking at a timeline of magical events here. We are tracing the psychological evolution of a bloodline.
Okay, so let's start in 1875.
Right. Let's ground ourselves in the beginning of the archive. The year is 1875, Salem, Massachusetts. The subject is Erin Rose Miller, who, later becomes Erin Rose Collins.
And the immediate socio-political context here is super vital because she is born into a no-mag family, a non-magical family.
Which is huge.
Right. And you noted in your research how heavy that historical baggage is. Being born a no-mag in 1875, Salem carries an entirely different weight than, say, London or Paris at the exact same time.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, the cultural memory of the witch trials is practically baked into the soil there.
It's an environment that's completely defined by historical paranoia. So when Erin's dormant magical spark finally manifests, it isn't just a surprise. It is a profound, terrifying crisis for her family.
Because she's a late bloomer, right?
Yeah, exactly. You have to look at the mechanics of magical manifestation in late bloomers. It's rarely a controlled, quiet event. It's often volatile. It's tied to emotional spikes.
So imagine the sheer psychological terror of a 19th century non-magical family witnessing the laws of physics just breaking down in their own parlor.
It's terrifying. The archive notes it actually required a formal intervention. A representative from Ilvermorny had to step in.
The American Wizarding School.
Right. They had to sit the parents down and basically systematically dismantle their entire understanding of reality to explain their daughter's singular nature.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it seems like it works out at first, right? At age 11, she heads off to Ilvermorny. She gets sorted into the Thunderbird house.
Yep, she settles in.
But then at age 15, the entire trajectory of her life just derails.
A catastrophic shift. Erin confides in a professor that she has started to perceive what the documents in your archive call veiled sights.
This is where I need you to explain the mechanics to me. Because looking at the notes you sent us, these veiled sights aren't just her seeing ghosts or like glowing auras.
No, not at all.
What exactly is she seeing that is entirely invisible to everyone else around her?
Okay, so think of standard wand magic as the software applications running on a computer. What Erin was suddenly able to see was the underlying operating system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the source code of reality. This is ancient magic. It is a foundational elemental force that the modern wizarding world has entirely forgotten how to access, let alone perceive.
So it's not just a spell you can look up in a book.
Exactly. The mechanics of it are tied to the very fabric of the environment. It exists as traces, whispers, these floating anomalies in the air that only someone with this incredibly rare genetic or spiritual trait can tap into.
It's like finding out you have absolute pitch, But instead of just hearing music, you're seeing the foundational, invisible code of the universe floating in front of you.
That's a perfect analogy.
But here's what I don't understand. Why the immediate, drastic reaction from Ilvermorny? I mean, how incredibly disruptive and terrifying must it be to completely uproot a 15-year-old's magical education and send her to a foreign continent just because she can see things no one else can?
It seems like an overreaction, right?
Yeah. Couldn't they just study it in America?
You have to view this through the lens of institutional panic.
Yep.
Ilvermorny didn't know what they were dealing with, but one professor did.
Ah, okay.
She happened to be acquainted with Professor Eleazar Fig at Hogwarts, and his late wife, Miriam, had dedicated her life to researching this exact phenomenon.
So it was a connection.
Right. The reaction wasn't just academic curiosity from Ilvermorny, it was a containment strategy. So Erin isn't just transferred, she is completely uprooted from her cultural context, her friends, her family.
Sent across the ocean.
Put on a transatlantic ship in the late 1800s, which, by the way, is an isolating weeks-long journey in itself, and then she's thrust into Hogwarts.
Where she gets sorted into Gryffindor.
Which is deeply telling.
How so?
Well, Thunderbird favors adventurers, but Gryffindor demands sheer nerve. And she goes from a relatively mundane, albeit late, magical awakening to being thrust into the absolute epicenter of a high-stakes, ancient mystery.
And the universe does not give her a single moment to catch her breath. Based on the timeline in the archive you compiled, her journey to Hogwarts is immediately intercepted by extreme violence.
Oh, immediately.
She doesn't even make it to the sorting ceremony before her carriage is literally attacked in midair by a dragon.
Which introduces the primary antagonist of her era, because that dragon attack wasn't random. It was a targeted assassination attempt wrapped in a larger geopolitical conflict.
Right.
Under Professor Fig's tutelage, Erin discovers that her ability to perceive this source code sets her on a collision course with a place called the Map Chamber, located deep beneath Hogwarts.
Which brings us to the Keepers. Percival Rackham, Charles Rookwood, Neam Fitzgerald, and Sam Bakar.
The Ancient Guardians.
Yeah, looking at the lore you provided, these 4 ancient figures essentially left behind a series of grueling trials. But wait, hold on. Why trials?
What do you mean?
If she's the only one who can see this magic, why do 4 dead wizards get to dictate how she uses it through some obstacle course?
That is a phenomenal question about the arrogance of ancient wizards, actually.
Right, like who put them in charge?
Well, the Keepers understood that this ancient magic is inherently volatile. It's not just a tool, it responds to emotion. So they designed these trials not just to test magical proficiency, but to test psychological resilience and moral fortitude.
So it's like a profiling test.
Exactly. If a wizard with a weak moral compass accesses the source code of reality, the fallout isn't just a bad spell going wrong, it's catastrophic localized destruction. They needed to ensure whoever inherited this site wouldn't be corrupted by the sheer omnipotence it offers.
And she has to undergo this extreme psychological profiling while balancing her 5th-year OWL exams. The duality of that existence is wild. By day, she's in charms class learning basic levitation with students who are stressed about homework. And by night, she's dodging ancient sentinels and unlocking the secrets of the universe.
And she's being actively hunted the entire time by Ranrock.
The goblin leader.
Yes. We have to look at the sociopolitical mechanics of Ranrock's rebellion here. And just as a quick disclaimer, your sources get into some heavy, politically charged territory regarding wizard-goblin relations.
Right. And to our listeners, we're not taking any sides here or endorsing any specific viewpoints on wizarding politics. We're just impartially reporting the historical facts from the source material you sent.
Absolutely. So Ranrock is a ruthless goblin who has deduced that there is a corrupted reservoir of this ancient magic hidden beneath the school. And he doesn't just want it for personal power. He wants it to fuel a violent uprising against wizardkind.
To weaponize historical grievance.
Precisely. And the alliance he forms with Victor Rookwood is fascinating from a sociological standpoint.
Victor Rookwood being the Dark Wizard.
Right. But more importantly, he is a descendant of Charles Rookwood, one of the very keepers testing Erin.
Oh, wow. I missed that connection.
Yeah. So you have a goblin trying to tear down the wizarding hierarchy, allying with a dark wizard who feels entitled to this power by blood right. And Erin, a no-mage-born American girl, is suddenly standing between them and the destruction of the world.
Let's talk about how that concludes. Because the climax of her time at Hogwarts is staggering, this massive underground confrontation. Ranrock actually manages to tap into this corrupted
He
repository.
does.
And he doesn't just use the magic, he physically absorbs it and transforms into a monstrous dragon fueled by this dark, volatile power.
The mechanics of that transformation are just horrifying. He is essentially overriding his physical form with corrupted source code. Yeah. So Erin, alongside Professor Fig, has to battle a creature of pure ancient malice.
And they defeat him. She manages to contain the magic, securing the repository, but in the struggle, Professor Fig loses his life.
It is a victory bought at an unimaginable psychological cost. She secures the foundations of magic, but she loses the only adult in the world who understood the burden she was carrying.
Yeah, her anchor is gone.
Completely gone.
Yeah.
And the aftermath of this battle is what truly defines Erin's legacy in your archive.
Right, because here's where it gets really interesting. I want to push back on the traditional hero narrative we always see in wizarding lore.
Go for it.
Usually someone slays the dragon, saves the world, and gets, an Order of Merlin. They get a chocolate fard card. There are parades.
Sure. Historical recognition.
But for Erin, this entire war is completely off the books. The world remains entirely unaware of the catastrophe she averted. There is no historical recognition whatsoever.
None.
She just quietly finishes her education. She marries Nicholas Alexander Collins, raises a family, and dies at 50. But doesn't holding a secret of that magnitude completely isolate a person, even from her own family?
It has to. I mean, you cannot share a bed with someone for decades and hold back the fact that you secretly govern the elemental forces of the world without building massive, massive internal walls.
Right.
She lived a seemingly quiet life, but her soul was never at rest. When she dies at 50, she makes a conscious, mechanical choice regarding her spirit. She refuses the onward journey.
She chooses to become a ghost.
Yes, returning to Hogwarts to serve as the eternal secret keeper of the ancient magic.
She sacrifices her eternal peace.
She chains herself to a castle to keep a secret. The mechanics of becoming a ghost in this world usually stem from fear of death, right? Or extreme unfinished business.
Yeah, like nearly headless Nick.
Right. But for Erin, it is a calculated, tactical decision. She sacrifices her eternal rest to guard a magic the world doesn't even know exists.
Wow.
She becomes a physical ghost to protect her descendants, knowing that eventually this genetic anomaly will surface again in her bloodline. It proves that true guardianship is often a solitary, thankless burden.
Erin literally chained herself to a castle to hide who she was to protect a legacy. But, and this is the crazy part of the archive, that kind of suppression, hiding who you are to survive, it doesn't just happen with world-ending magic.
Not at all.
A generation later, we see the exact same psychological suppression happening in a posh London townhouse, not to hide from goblins, but to hide from family.
Which brings us to Katherine Rose Collins, born Katherine Taylor. She marries into the Collins line, and the contrast between her and Erin is just striking. We move from a no-mage-born girl fighting an ancient war to a pure-blood witch trapped in a golden cage of societal expectation.
You included these incredible character studies on the Taylor family in your notes. They are old money, generations of immense wealth derived from potion making.
Right, highly lucrative.
Her father, Edward, and his ancestors all specialized in clinical cures for magical ailments. It's a very detached, clinical way to interact with healing. You brew it in a cauldron, you sell it, you walk away.
It is entirely transactional. And Eleanor, Katherine's mother, comes from a similarly wealthy, detached background. They had Katherine late in life. She's an only child growing up in this opulent manner.
And she's given everything, physically.
Yeah, she's educated in the finest manners, playing piano, surrounded by priceless artifacts, yet she is profoundly, crushingly lonely.
It's like growing up inside a museum exhibit. Everything around you is priceless and beautiful, but you aren't allowed to touch anything. And you definitely aren't allowed to just be a messy, normal kid.
Exactly. Her mother's love was entirely conditional. It was predicated on Katherine acting as a flawless extension of the Taylor brand. The archive gives us a devastating psychological window into this.
The book incident.
Yes. At age 7, Katherine displays her first sign of magic. She accidentally summons a book from a high shelf. Now, in any normal wizarding family, this is a moment of immense celebration. It's the confirmation of magical ability.
Right, everyone cures.
But here, Edward is impressed, sure. But Eleanor looks at her 7-year-old daughter and says, the display could have been more remarkable.
Oh my God, that is just surgical emotional abuse to a 7-year-old.
It is designed to keep the child off balance, constantly striving for an impossible standard of perfection. You know, trauma in the wizarding world isn't always about dark wizards casting unforgivable curses. It is often the quiet, systemic crushing of a child's spirit.
So true.
Katherine learns the mechanics of survival in that house. She must suppress her true, curious, creative self.
And she carries those survival mechanics straight to Hogwarts. She gets sorted into Ravenclaw, which makes total sense. She retreats into her intellect. But she doesn't thrive there.
Not socially, no.
Right. While the rest of Ravenclaw Tower is socializing, she is isolating herself in the library. She's internalizing Eleanor's coldness. Her dad sends weekly owls, but Eleanor rarely writes. Katherine is starving for a maternal bond she is never going to receive.
She builds immense mental fortifications. She hides behind her studies because books, unlike Eleanor Kaler, do not demand perfection to offer knowledge. Books are safe. People are volatile.
But then, in her 5th year, the structural integrity of those walls gets tested. She meets Anthony Joseph Collins.
A Gryffindor.
And looking at your notes, he is the antithesis of everything Katherine was raised to be. He is free, he's expressive, he's spirited.
Anthony doesn't just bump into her walls. He actively dismantles them. The mechanics of their relationship are fascinating. A Gryffindor doesn't have the patience for Ravenclaw obfuscation.
Aha, true.
He sees right through the perfectionist facade and just refuses to accept it. He patiently, persistently encourages her to value her true identity, showing her it is safe to experience emotion without fear of punitive judgment.
So what does this all mean in the grand scheme of the archive? It feels like Anthony was Katherine's own personal curse breaker.
Oh, I love that framing.
And I mean that mechanically, because your notes point out he goes on to become a professional curse breaker for the Ministry of Magic. But before he ever stepped foot in an Egyptian tomb or dismantled a cursed artifact for the government, he broke the generational curse of emotional coldness that Eleanor had woven into Katherine's psyche.
That is a phenomenal way to analyze it. A curse breaker's job is to unweave hostile enchantments. Anthony carefully unwove the hostile psychological enchantments Eleanor placed on her daughter.
Yeah.
Because of his intervention, Katherine learns what unconditional love feels like. They fall in love, they marry, and they move to Godric's Hollow, physically distancing themselves from the Taylor estate in London.
And Katherine's career choice is incredibly telling here. She becomes a healer at St. Mungo's.
Right.
She completely rejects her family's clinical, transactional potion-making business to become a hands-on, frontline medical professional. Her patronus is a white swan, which speaks heavily to grace, healing, and perhaps the massive internal transformation she underwent.
She actively chooses to break the cycle.
Yeah.
When they have their daughter, Agatha, Katherine becomes the exact mother she was denied. She is affectionate, attentive, deeply loving. She provides Agatha with a sanctuary of a childhood.
She beats the trauma. She secures the dream job, the dream husband, the beautiful daughter, the historic cottage. But the universe has a horrific sense of timing. The peak of Katherine's emotional recovery directly sets up the most devastating fall, bringing this profound, life-altering grief into the family line.
Tragedy strikes when Anthony is just 30 years old. The mechanics of his profession catch up with him. Curse breaking is inherently lethal work.
Right.
You are constantly interacting with hostile magic designed to kill or maim. He encounters something he cannot dismantle, and his life is cut short. Katherine, also 30, is left entirely alone to raise 10-year-old Agatha.
Wait, hold on. This is where I struggle with the lore you provided. Katherine is a top-tier healer at St. Mungo's. It is her literal profession to reverse magical damage.
Yes.
She is exceedingly proficient in spellcasting and potion-making. How does she just fail to save her own husband? Is ministry curse-breaking really that reckless, or was this a specific type of dark magic she just couldn't counter?
You have to look at the mechanics of dark curses versus healing magic. Standard St. Mungo's protocols operate on the assumption that a curse has a counter-curse, or that magical tissue damage can be regenerated with essence of dittany or specialized charms.
Biological fixes.
Exactly. But high-level dark magic, the kind designed to protect ancient tombs or forbidden artifacts, it often operates by decaying the life force itself, or anchoring itself to the soul rather than the physical body. Katherine's healing failed because she was applying biological and standard magical remedies to a curse that was likely metaphysical or structurally irreversible.
The existential crisis that must trigger, to have all the knowledge, all the skill, to be the absolute expert in the room, and for it to just bounce off the curse, killing your husband. It's the ultimate irony, the nightmare for a medical professional. How does a healer process that specific, targeted type of failure without losing their mind?
For Katherine, the psychological response is an immediate regression to her childhood survival tactics. When faced with unbearable emotional pain, she goes numb. The archives note she becomes increasingly serious and reserved once more. She reconstructs the walls Anthony broke down.
So Erin became a physical ghost to protect her secret. Katherine becomes an emotional ghost to survive her grief.
Precisely. But she builds these walls with one crucial caveat. She fights desperately to keep them from shutting out her daughter. She turns herself to stone so she can be a rock for Agatha, even as she is completely hollowed out inside.
The primary source document you included here, Katherine's letter to Anthony after his death, is one of the most devastating things I've ever read.
It's heartbreaking.
Let's look at the exact verbiage. She writes, "I find I miss you more with every breath I take. I miss the way you made the tea, always a bit stronger than mine, and the steady, quiet strength you brought to this home." She goes on, "Please, wherever you are, send me a bit of your courage. Help me find the path when the shadows feel too long. I need to be strong for her, to be the rock you always were for me. You are my home, and you always will be, until we meet again in the clearing at the end of the path."
If you dissect the psychology of that first line, "I miss the way you made the tea, always a bit stronger than mine," it tells you everything about her trauma.
Yeah.
It is the juxtaposition of the mundane with the existential.
Right.
The strongest grief doesn't always manifest in screaming at the sky. It manifests in the quiet absence in the kitchen. She is clinging to the sensory memory of his daily routine because the macro reality of his death is just too large to process.
And she asks a dead man to send her courage. She, a Ravenclaw healer, is asking the Gryffindor cursebreaker to help her navigate the dark. But that final phrase, the clearing at the end of the path, it implies something so deeply tragic.
How do you read it?
It implies she views the entirety of the rest of her life not as something to be lived, but as a dark, shadowed tunnel she simply has to endure until she can find him again in death.
It speaks to a woman holding her breath for the next 40 or 50 years. Her heart is just frozen in time at age 30. And the geography of where they are processing this grief amplifies it entirely. The setting of Godric's Hollow is not just a backdrop. It is a mirror reflecting her internal state.
Because we've seen what happened to the family, but where they process it is equally crucial.
Exactly.
Living in Godric's Hollow in the West Country, they are practically tripping over history. I mean, it's the birthplace of Godric Gryffindor. It's a shared community where wizards live discreetly alongside muggles under the statute of secrecy.
Right, a very specific type of environment.
You can't even walk to the post office without passing that war memorial that magically transforms into a statue of James, Lily, and Harry Potter, a monument to a family being destroyed on Halloween, and right down the street is the ancient graveyard.
The spatial environment is oppressive in its sorrow. Godric's Hollow operates on cognitive dissonance. On the surface, Muggle residents see a charming, quiet West Country village. There's a pub, a square, a quaint church. But beneath the secrecy charms, the magical residents are living inside a museum of martyrdom.
Living in Godric's Hollow must be like living inside a history book where every single page is steeped in both legendary heroism and profound, inescapable loss.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Godric's Hollow is the perfect physical manifestation of Katherine's internal state. It is a place of immense magical significance that hides behind a mask of everyday mundanity, deeply haunted by the ghosts of the past. Katherine and Agatha still live in the very cottage, echoing with memories of Anthony.
Which brings us to the living embodiment of all this history. We've seen the legacy of magical suppression with Erin, the legacy of emotional suppression with Katherine, and the geography of grief they inhabit. Now we have to look at the teenager carrying this forward. Let's talk about Agatha.
Agatha is a fascinating psychological amalgamation of the bloodline. She is Agatha Erin Collins, born January 18th, an 18-year-old half-blood witch, sorted into Hufflepuff. And a timeline in your notes is brutal. Her father died just days before she turned 10.
From a developmental psychology perspective, losing a parent at 9 or 10 is catastrophic. You are just old enough to fully grasp the permanence of death, but you don't have any of the emotional scaffolding to process the nuance of grief.
Not at all.
And based on her profile, Agatha is a dreamer. She wears her emotions on her sleeve. She is fiercely loyal, deeply sensitive, and she struggles with stubbornness.
But the most critical detail you highlighted in her behavioral profile is her coping mechanism. When Agatha feels unwanted or insecure, she isolates herself. She finds it incredibly difficult to express her feelings when she feels threatened.
Okay, here's where I see the cycle repeating. Katherine tried so incredibly hard to be the perfect, loving mother, right? The exact opposite of Eleanor. And she did love Agatha. But by turning herself to stone, by burying her own grief behind this stoic, numb facade to survive, Did Katherine accidentally pass on a different kind of isolation to her daughter? Because when Agatha feels insecure, her default reflex is to withdraw, which is exactly what Katherine did as a teenager hiding in the Hogwarts library.
The mechanism of trauma delivery changed, but the resulting behavior echoed across the generation. Agatha is a Hufflepuff, born of a Ravenclaw mother and a Gryffindor father. She inherited Anthony's brave, stubborn spirit, but when she feels emotionally threatened, she doesn't fight. She defaults to her mother's internal fortifications. She retreats.
When you look at the documents you provided, Agatha's letter to her mother, you can actually see that Hufflepuff insecurity bleeding through the ink.
Let's hear it.
Agatha writes, "Mum, you're my rock, Mum. You're a brilliant witch and the best mummy in the whole world. Thank you for being my mum, for looking after me and keeping me safe. I want to be just like you when I grow up. Mum, don't forget that Dad will always be with us, tucked away in our hearts."
Synthesizing Agatha's psychological profile from that, it reads as sweet. But there is a profound, subtle weight to her calling her mother a rock. Rocks are impenetrable. They are cold. Agatha, who is highly emotionally intuitive, is leaning on a mother who has made herself unreadable.
Yeah.
Agatha is actively trying to comfort Katherine about Anthony's death, reminding her he's tucked away in their hearts. The child is managing the parents' unspoken grief.
So we have this intense, deeply human story about a mother and daughter navigating loss in a haunted village. It feels like a complete narrative about the sociology of wizarding grief. But just as you get comfortable with that, your archive deploys the ultimate twist. A revelation that yanks us all the way back to the 1890s.
The genetic anomaly surfaces.
Boom.
By a massive, ironical twist of fate, Agatha, the thrice great-granddaughter of Erin Rose Collins, possesses the exact same, exceptionally rare ability to perceive and command ancient magic.
The source code. She can see it. We started this deep dive with a no-mage-born teenager facing impossible ancient magic, and now her modern descendant is about to face the exact same thing.
It's the ultimate full circle.
Mind blown. And the brilliant, twisted part of this, Ghost Erin, who has waited a century anchored to Hogwarts, who sacrificed her eternal rest to guard this repository, is now going to be the one to guide her own thrice great-granddaughter in mastering it.
It's the thematic climax of the archive. Erin became a ghost for this exact eventuality. But this raises an important question. Look at the mechanics of how this magic will be handled now. Erin was a Gryffindor. She interacted with ancient magic through the lens of a warrior.
Right.
She fought a physical war against a goblin rebellion, using the magic as a weapon to suppress a threat. But Agatha is a Hufflepuff. Her defining traits are profound empathy, loyalty, and a deep, intrinsic understanding of emotional pain.
So how does a witch shaped by the quiet, pervasive grief of Godric's Hollow interact with the volatile source code of reality? Ancient magic responds to emotion, right?
Exactly.
Erin had to lock it away through force. But Agatha is the daughter of a St. Mungo's healer and a ministry curse breaker. She has the metaphorical DNA to both unweave hostile enchantments and heal deep wounds.
Agatha's specific Hufflepuff traits might be precisely what this ancient power requires in the modern era. She doesn't need to fight it like a Gryffindor or study it coldly like a Ravenclaw. She might be uniquely positioned to soothe it, to understand its emotional resonance.
Wow.
She isn't just learning to cast spells. She is navigating a century of her family's psychological baggage to master a magic that feeds on intention.
The Collins family archive you send us isn't merely about cool magical abilities. It's not about dragons or veiled sights. It is a rigorous examination of the burdens we inherit.
Completely.
Whether that burden is the psychological trauma of a cold upbringing, the crushing guilt of a lost love, or the literal physical burden of guarding ancient world-ending power, we all carry our ancestors with us. Their survival tactics become our instincts.
Even in a world where you can alter reality with a wand, dragons, and potions, the most powerful and defining forces are entirely human. Magic doesn't negate trauma. It merely amplifies the scale of it.
Yeah.
The human connections we make, the grief we fail to process, and the legacies of love and sacrifice we leave behind dictate the future far more than any spell.
Which leaves us with one final, provocative, lingering question to pull from your research today. We know Erin anchored herself to Hogwarts as a ghost to guard this magic because she felt she had to. She assumed the burden alone.
Right.
But if Agatha, fueled by her Hufflepuff loyalty and her deep understanding of family grief, can finally master this ancient magic, could she use the source code of reality to relieve Erin of her eternal vigil?
Oh, that's a powerful thought.
Could Agatha's ultimate act be the key to finally allowing her thrice great-grandmother to pass on and find peace in that clearing at the end of the path that Katherine wrote about? Think about that. Thank you for sharing this incredible archive with us, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.